So welcome guys to the Grub Club. So let's start with what exactly the tone of voice is there, and it's completely there in user experience, and how it is correlated, how it makes a impact into the industry, and how it gives you more user engagement, right? So let's start. So when thinking about the UX design of your project, there are so many elements to keep in mind that the actually written content is often left on the black burner, right? So we are told users don't read. So we use lorem ipsum on your way out until we absolutely have to write something. But however, we must keep in mind whenever users do read, they pay attention. And that is why establishing the tone of your voice is critical part of user experience design process. So next, so it is seen in everything what we do, what we design, from buttons, from call to actions, from introductions, and even in the error pages. So how your products speak to your users integral to the experience of how it has a notable impact. The right tone could be the difference between a one-time user and a convert. And this is not the extraction. I have been gone through a lot of articles, what exactly the tone states and how it has been stated. Are there any kind of enough researches made? So this is the case study. This is a small study which I'm representing in front of you, and this is not an exaggeration. Okay, so this is the study made by Nielsen and Norman Groups, and users were shown two versions of the same product website and asked to give their opinions, even though the two different versions of the same website were identical except for the tone of voice, right? Responses had clearly references. For example, or if you see on the left and if you see on the right, right? So for example, the casual version of the hospital website were enormously preferred over its formal counterpart. It was understood to be more friendly and even more trustworthy, despite the fact we should usually associated the confidence and the trustworthiness with the formality of the second version, right? So for example, if you see the difference between two options over here, you will able to see that the first one is more friendly and trustworthy, and the second version is more talks about confidence and the trustworthiness in terms of the language what they have put, the tone of voice they have put, and they have tested with the users. But however, that version was seen as a business like, and it was not able to serve an expected hospital patient, right? So basically the patient has to go through website, they have to understand the website, and they should appreciate the service, and they should able to go and start engaging with the brand, right? But the tone of voice was ill suited to the product in the minds of the user, so that the version of the website did not have the desired impact. So what you see on the right hand side, it had the major impact. On the what you see on the left hand side, it does not have an impact, because the first thing, the left hand side version has the more user engagement, it is more user friendly tone what they have used. But in the left hand side version, if you see, it evokes the more confidence which users what was not a was not wanted to have that particular tone of language with they wanted to use or they want to hear, right? So next example is also a great example which has given a success to this product, the tone of voice what they have used. So the product name is CoStar, right? So a trendy astrology app which gives you daily notifications, and you read those daily notification about how your day is been looked at the glance, right? But the co-founder and the CEO has talked about the team is constantly working on finding the appropriate language they use in their horoscopes, and trying to maintain in the balance between the motivation and the negativity. So they don't want to motivate the user also, but they don't bring the more negative language in terms of how the user engagement should be. So they don't want to give the more negativity to the product, but whatever the status is there, they have to show it, but in a way that the user also gets motivated. And the fact is, the tone of language which they have used into the product, it's paying them off. And they have got almost over 5 million users, and they have got rated like a top 10 lifestyle applications into the app store, right? And it may be hard to believe that co-star usually enjoy the coarse language and the borderline, whether it is bullying they are subjected to, which goes to show, but you should know what language you are using to your audience and what kind of audience is the key for you, right? So next thing, now that we have established what is the tone, let's talk about finding yours, like what exactly your product should have, that kind of tone, what kind of audience you should do. So before everything else, you have or you need to able to answer those questions clearly. The first two questions are very important. Who is your product? Like as a person, as a language, what is your product, right? And who is your audience? Let's break them down and think about the personality of your product. It is a fun, challenging app, right? Or it is a restricted banking website, or maybe a sophisticated online shopping experience. Look into your goals, your strengths, and your competitors. All of this will help you to position yourself, your distinct voice. Next, look into your target audience. Understand their behavior, their interests, their culture, their slang, and anything else that will help you to get to know your users better. Once you have done your research, you would able to have that clear vision to understand what your product should connect to your user, right? So next thing is, there are four major primary dimensions into the voice of tone we use. So the first is funny versus serious. So if you look at this, there is a difference between error 404 and the requested URL was not found in the server, which is on the left hand side. And the right hand side, you can see a small example of a Pixar, which usually says like, yeah, oops, the content was not found, the content ran away. But do you want to be more humorous, or does your product fall for more serious tone? So you have to make sure that where exactly your product should fall, whether you want your product to be more serious, more funky, or you want to be your product more funny, more bit like more engaging to your users. So you have to establish a micro copy, right? The next thing is formal and casual. So basically this type of tone of language, you use it like more like official documentation, texting your friend. And this casual tone includes adding constant contradictions sometimes, and also sometimes you simplify the grammar and vocabulary, and you also sprinkle some uh, slang into it. So for example, if you compare apologies for the convenience, so this is something like a more like a formal tone of saying, but if you want to say it very quick and very in a slang manner, so you can say sorry about that, right? So these are the two different ways of talking, like it is a more formal, and it is like you can another way you can say it, okay, it is more casual, right? The another thing is what type of tone of language you want to use. It is very respectful or it is very irrelevant. So this dimension is very tricky on the point where exactly you want to move this point. So the good example right now is like, if you look at the irrelevant or irrelevance of showing it, and the things are very rightly done, it is the Old Spice product, because the tone of language what they use into the product is very non-vocabulary. So the language which they have used, the words which they have used is beardness, the smilingness, then plit influencers. So those are the few words they have used into a website, which is very irrelevant approach. It does not have the formal and uh, respect to full language of showing. But thankful that they still have more quality products, and their irrelevant language is also helping them to sell everything because their product itself is the best, right? And if you compare this old Spice website to the Dove website, the Dove website, you will be able to see it's more approach towards the beauty, grooming, and it has more respectful tone of language. So this is how you can differentiate between the respectful and irrelevant tone of language. The next tone of language is something you can say enthusiast versus matter of fact, right? So these concerns are level of enthusiasm and the excitement you want to express when you're talking to your audience. So these are the dimensions can sadly often overrode. So you can see most of the products can use matter of facts also into more enthusiastic way, but it is not good also sometimes to talk more matter of fact in the enthusiastic way. You have to show something matter of fact as a matter of fact, and if you have to show something which can enthusiast user, you have to show a tone of language or a message in such a way that it enthusiasts and it builds the momentum into the for the user. So think about this notification that we receive from the Facebook and the Instagram, right? So in the Instagram, you see that X people commented on your post and Y uh, are following you, right? So these are the different way of showing the things in a different way. Sometimes you show the matter of fact statements that simple convey the need of information you would like to access at the given point of time. And sometimes the less is more is also good for you to show that, okay, this is how you have to show and this is how the user will able to understand the information what you are trying to show. So you have to be very uh, uh, control about where you have to get be more expressive and where exactly you have to show the facts in a way that user can also appreciate it, right? So of course there are there there are many words to describe a product in a specific language. There are what we have said, there are the different 8 sides of showing how your product language and product tone can go for, and also it will help you to position yourself to see the endless sea of the adjectives, so that you can see what there are different types of ways to show the tone of voice, how the product can be built, how the product can be shown to the audience so that they can just feel the product, they can understand the product. Remember, in everything this whatever we have gone so far, you have to remember that you have to focus on how you want your audience to feel when you're using that particular product. So basically you have to make sure that all the tone of voices you are using, it should not be in a neutral format, it should somewhere connecting those in those 8 parameters we have shown, right? And you don't have to be afraid to make adjustment in your tone, and you have to see, okay, what type of product I have, what type of language I have to connect with that particular audience, and just see how it has to be built up. So now we have defined our voices, and then the fun begins. So once you know these are the different voices you have to build for your product. So you create different word banks, different simple phrases, develop the style guide for your product. What kind of languages would go into different chunks of different sections? It can be a call to actions, it can be a notification, either it can be a help section, right? And you keep researching, you keep writing different ways of either the content can be half been said through the visual connections. You can use both vice and versa for it, and you can test it, research it again, you can test it again whether the whatever the tone you would like to connect with your audience, whether it is being connected or not. And you will able to see that your unique tone of voice is constantly is getting better and better through onboarding process to help sections, and then see how the life becomes more engaging and more excited, right? Thank you.
So Vinayak, how do you, as the process, how do you go about doing this? So I know that you mentioned word banks.
Yes.
Uh, where when do you think we should plug up a step like that into our UX process?
And so once we are doing a wireframing and understanding where what our competitors are doing and where exactly we are hitting the right audience, that is where we have to start building our word brand and make
Okay,
sure
so
words
so
we are.
it usually comes at either a planning stage at a content strategy level,
Yes.
or once the product is done, then when we have to revisit the UX writing in the right way.
Yes, so like once we know like what are our personas and what are the different market segments are there and what are the products which are existing into market, what tone of language they are using to connect their user, right? So once we
Okay.
understand that, so while we are doing in a wireframe stage, we know these are the products which are there into the market and they are using the similar type of product, right? So we know
Hmm.
this tone of languages are going, the pattern is going across, and we know where we have to differentiate it and where we have to bring our product into the limelight. That is where we have to start creating our word banks for it in the
Fair
wireframe.
enough. Fair enough. So if I were to quantify it, so it can be done at a couple of stages. Number one would be when we are first interacting with the client and doing the competitive survey, we
Yes,
can have like a mood board of content.
yes,
Then, as we do wireframe, our UX writing should incorporate that mood board of content into as insights that we got and put it into our wireframes.
yes.
And how do you do A/B tests on content strategy before deploying the product? Is there some strategy in place for that?
For example, if we have a existing users and client some set of users where we can just show this is what we have the two different prototypes to be seen. So we lose out on visuals. We just keep the like the boxes, the empty boxes, what I have shown in the previous UCSF case study. So the UCSF case study, what they have shown, that they have shown the visuals and the content, and the next version what they have shown only content. So they have made sure the users will go through the content and just see whether the content is well understood or not while they are understanding it, like observing, looking at the product, whether the content is whatever they has been placed, whether it is more engaging for the user or not. So once we have two different users, then we can go ahead and test it out which content language is more getting more user engaged to that particular product.
The other question is, once you have brand persona, like what are you? How is your brand? Is your brand a guy talking friendly, or
Hmm.
is it like a teacher talking authoritatively? So that stuff. Can you
Hmm.
explain all the small steps involved in that particular phase?
Yes. So usually, once we are building up the tone for the brand, right? So usually we do a mood boarding process. So mood
Okay.
boarding process happens. There are two different things. What are the most uh, uh, characteristics your brand should have, right? And the another thing, like, what kind of emotions should your brand should evoke? So there are you go and identify those characteristics in terms of keywords and the phrases, and also you understand it how visually, like how like in terms of mood boarding, the tone of voice in terms of the visuals, either it should be pleasing, it should be enthusiastic, either it should be more formal. So through both of them, it's not happening just taking the word bank into the consideration and shortening the phrases and the terminologies and the jargons for it. Also,
Hmm.
you go for the visual cues for it so that it will support both hand in hand.
Got it, Vinayak. Thank you.
Cool. Can
But
we? Yeah,
are we
Bharat?
implementing this, Vinayak? I mean, for any design that we make, are we
Yes,
putting this?
just slowly introducing our in our design process.
Awesome, awesome.
In our product.
Actually, we implicitly do it for all of our products in a way. It's just that we don't particularly have a defined step for it yet.
Got it.
Usually, this happens as an integral part of our wireframing, and the UX writing comes in when we do wireframing, right? At that time, the designer usually implicitly takes a call on what kind of tone are we using for this product and consistently sticks with it.
Right.
Got
The,
it.
tr- the, the troubles are when the tone becomes inconsistent, right? Usually, when we start out, the brand is all serious and stuff, and then all of a sudden there's a pop-up where you're saying something nonsensical. So that stuff generally doesn't sit well unless it's used consistently. It has to be funny from the beginning itself, then people will buy into it.
Yes.
Otherwise, it has to be serious from the beginning itself, and then you have to consistently be serious. You can't shift between these two personas, and that usually leads to uh, anxiety and things like that in the user.
Yes. Yes.
So something like a drastic change, we shouldn't find. Maybe a slight mood change is what I was
Actually, a good case study would be Old Spice. You remember Old Spice, right? Old Spice used to have a very serious sort of branding. And then you remember when Milind Soman came in and it became extremely humorous.
Yes.
You remember? So it usually rebranding really focuses on tone. Sometimes old brands that are legacy brands usually reinvent themselves as a rebranded, very approachable product, right? And that is a story that we see across board in the industry right now. And usually new products generally start off in a very cordial, approachable tone to begin with. Earlier, it was not the case.
Got it. Thank you, Manoj. Thank you, Vinay.
Yes.
Great. Vinayak, thank you so much